Hola, hola, bienvenidos a todos desde la Embajada de los Estados Unidos en la Ciudad de México. Estamos muy contentos de recibirlos en este Masterminds número 2, que tenemos hoy. Hay dos invitados increíbles. Si ustedes no hablan bien inglés, no se preocupen, tenemos interpretación simultánea, así que busquen solamente la función de Zoom para que puedan ustedes escuchar la versión en español. Con eso, voy a dar paso a presentarles a las personas que van a estar el día de hoy con nosotros. Como ustedes seguramente recuerdan, tenemos a un exalumno o exalumna en cada ocasión que nos presenta algún speaker de los Estados Unidos en temas maravillosos. De hecho, no se lo pierdan, hoy vamos a estar hablando de integridad, de responsabilidad social empresarial, de innovación, etcétera. Va a ser muy rica la conversación. Así que voy a cambiar al idioma inglés para que podamos continuar, y ya que nuestra ponente también habla solamente inglés, pero no olviden cambiar a la función de traducción en caso de que lo requieran. All right, so we are so glad that we have Tania Katán, which is the CEO of Creative Trespassing. She is an international speaker from the tech companies, organizations, TED Talks, you name it. She works so much in creativity issues, innovation. Everybody likes her. Fortune 500 companies and 50 technology companies. So I don't want to introduce her yet, but please know that she is with us today, and we're so glad you're around. Welcome. And on the other hand, we have also alumna Odile Cortés, who is also a great alumni, well, part of the alumni of the embassy. She is the head of Integrarse, which is a company of corporate social responsibility that just turned 10 years old. And she is going to be also asking the questions to Tania. But just to tell you a little bit about Odile, she has been wonderful. Meeting Vice President Kamala Harris when she came to Mexico, she represented all of us, asking and telling the story of why Mexico needs to integrate more with the United States. And she was part of our Young Leaders of the Americas Initiative cohort of 2017. So it's been, 7 years already, and the progress has been amazing of Odile. So with that, maybe I should just let Odile directly discuss about her progress. Why don't you go ahead? Welcome.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you to the embassy, as usual, for giving us a space so we can express what we have accomplished thanks to your support. Indeed, I have a company that, as you can see, has just turned 10 years old. We're very excited because it seemed like a big dream 10 years ago, and today's a reality. The company focuses on helping other businesses on sustainability and diversity. So we have a huge part on what a business can do in order to be a responsible citizen, let's call it like that, considering both their environmental approaches, their social status, and pretty much the focus of this talk, what their integrity should be, because it's most of the time what we hear is about washings, portraying yourself to be something as a company, and when you scratch a little bit, you find out that they're not doing everything that's possible. So a big part of what we do as a company is to help these companies do an integral and real, honest work to try to save the planet and try to save people inside them. So integrity is a big focus of what we do, and that's what we're going to be discussing today.
That's wonderful. All right, so why don't you start with the interview right there, Odile? I think that this is the perfect timing, and don't forget, everybody, to have your Q&A, the questions that you may have that you are dying to ask for. This is your grand chance, and have them ready, because at the end we'll have 20 minutes for Q&A. So Odile, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for the time. And Tania, very welcome. We're very happy to have you.
Hola, I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Yeah.
I would love to start with the big question, Tania. What is for you integrity? What definition resonates most with how you have seen companies being when they talk about integrity?
Yeah, it's really, to me, it's two things. And the primary thing is alignment. And alignment in many different ways. So one is alignment in terms of from the personal to the team, to the organizational. So from a personal perspective, it's what you say, what you do, and how, and what your speech and everything you think align. So think, speech, and actions, all of them need to be aligned in order to be a human who's living in integrity and a team or a company who's acting in integrity. Because there's so many times where, you know, as you were saying, you were talking about the washing, right? Like whether it's like, you know, LGBTQIA or what, however people are sort of like saying, oh, you know, we have corporate responsibility, and yet there's a disconnect or lack of alignment between what they're saying and what they're doing on the ground. And you know what, the thing that I've done my whole career is help, you know, people, individuals, and organizations tell better and more honest stories that connect to their audiences, so that they feel something, so that they feel empowered to take positive action. And that doesn't happen, that feeling, that exchange doesn't happen if it's incongruous what you're saying and what you're actually doing. So that's integrity for me, is alignment, like a holistic way of functioning and doing. Otherwise, we're just, you know, we're just lying. That's what's called lying. But some people get paid lots of money, and so they like to lie more, like in proportion. But some people get paid lots of money and they like to tell the truth more. And so we're hoping at this, you know, stage and age that the megaphone, or the people who are actually aligned, can amplify ideas and ways of working and being in the world. So I guess that's a high level definition of how I understand and how I practice being, living in integrity, for sure.
I really like what you're saying, because there's a definition I use a lot on corporate responsibility that says that it's not what you do with the money, but how you do your money. Because most of the time we use the money to, you know, like show off what we're doing and this much help that I'm doing, but how do you actually do that money? That's where we can tell if a company is responsible or not in the real life. And the alignment, just as you said, it's not only in personal ways, but also in the business. The business itself does not exist. It's made out of humans. You know? So if those humans are not aligned with the same perspective, I'm gonna steal some time here, but I want to tell you quickly a story of one ex-client that we had, a former client, that even when they had received a recognition because they were socially responsible, we found out that someone in one part of the country had a problem because their shoes were not the correct size. And the supervisor said that he was not going to give the right size until he had earned them. And that's when we thought, exactly, that's a big problem. You know, like we can be in the corporate side very integral and doing everything responsible, but if the humans that can make our company are not aligned, just as you said it, then integrity goes out of the question. And so I really like your that. I just told you an example of how integrity does not look in the business world. But in your experience, particularly with what the amount of experience that you have, how does integrity manifest in the business world?
Well, first of all, you're making me think of a quote. You know, the poet Maya Angelou that has this beautiful quote, and it always comes to me in moments where I'm thinking about like what it means to have impact in the world and in work. And the quote is, people won't remember what you did. People won't remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. Yeah. And so that story that you're just talking about somebody who's being shamed to earn the right to wear shoes to do the job that they were hired to do is a way that they have been made to feel horrible, and that lack of alignment. You know, some ways that I've seen it. So I get invited to speak at a lot of like Fortune 500 companies, and also like nonprofit, small businesses, large, medium. And the first thing I note is that a lot of times they'll bring me in because we're talking about like diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, you know, accessibility. And I will look at the walls where they have quotes, and a lot of the quotes will be from predominantly white dudes. No offense, white dudes, my brother's one. But the point is that there is immediately, I always question, I always like say, oh yeah, I know we're talking about diversity and you're all into innovation. Did you know that diverse teams actually are like produce more innovative products and services? You know, and by diversity, I mean thought, culture, you know, all of it. So that's one way in which I've seen this sort of incongruity between people saying, yay, we champion this thing, but them showing. Another way is it makes me cringe, which is go to any website of any company right now and see the images that they have on their website. And I've noticed there's a disproportion of companies, small, medium, large, who have a lot of people of color on their website in terms of images. And not a lot of people of color actually work there. So to me, that's an opportunity for these companies and just people who work there who are like, excuse me, these things are out of alignment. Are we really selling and telling people the truth? And if not, then it's time to course correct. So those are some of the ways that I've seen it really obvious to me, because I've trained my whole life to point out injustices. So you got to see them first. Yeah.
Now that you mentioned about the imagery, there's a lot of discussion, particularly in the Latin side, because once we were Latin, looking for stock photos, for instance, and you type diversity, and you always find like this Black person or Afro-American person, this maybe a nation descent, and someone that has like the red hair, and that's it, you know? And those are the images that we have to use because there's no actual portrayal of what Latin diversity looks like. There are no fat people, there are no, you know, like this option of, even when you actually want to try to do it, and just as you said it, one thing is the picture, and then the other one is seeing who gets hired in the company. You know, we used to have a client that I made fun that it seemed that they were all given like gift cards from the same store because they would like all dress up in the same way. You know? So it is true indeed. And then now that you were talking about this is ones that you want to actually dig into the company and know if they are like speaking their truth. But if I am a user, a consumer, common one that just takes out a product from the shelf, how can I know if these companies are integral or not? Where's the integrity there?
That's a great question. I'm going to think about that for a second, because sometimes it's less obvious, you know, when there's an incongruity, but I'm thinking about there was in the US several years ago in the 90s, there was an ad campaign called Got Milk. Do you know this? Okay. Okay. So yeah. Right. And it was in the United States. It made sense. Like it was got milk. And then the same advertising company went into the Mexico market, and they did a literal translation. And the translation was like, "Tienes leche," which is like, are you lactating? So the point of that, you know, like, how are you aware? You know, sometimes it's like literally a billboard and people are like, take it down immediately. And other times, you know, it's more insidious. I think, you know, I think about VW and companies like that who are like diesel and we care for the environment. And then, you know, they had to recall all their cars because they basically lied to everyone. And so sometimes it is less obvious, because if you look at all of the brand stories that came out of VW from that point, you know, before, it was like fun, like two guys just in a vehicle looking for a couch on the side of the road singing da da da, you know, it was like, yeah, this is fun, we're scrappy, we're inventors, we're creatives. And then, you know, the secret leaked out. And so be on alert. And in this day and age, the beauty of technology is that when you are lying, hiding, it will come out and it will be amplified to millions of people. So if that's not incentive enough for people and organizations to change their ways and think about like holistically, and you can't hide. We can't hide anymore, which is actually good when used well, you know, for good. So yeah, That's a tough question about, I think also looking at language is really important. That's a way that sometimes people will use certain words, or they'll eliminate words from the website or from the software. And and it's like oh wait, they don't want gay people in that software. I can tell because they use this word, that. So we really have to train ourselves as consumers and as employees who are potentially getting jobs, or and then also as entrepreneurs, to make sure that the language we use, the imagery that we use, are really the breadcrumbs that we want to lead people to the stories that we're telling and selling, and that there's a truth to that journey for them. Yeah. So
I love what you're saying, because at least in Mexico, more or less 70% of the employment is done by small and medium companies. And we tend to see I'm not going to be good at this translation, but there's a saying in Spanish that says that we see the small thing in the eye of someone else, and we miss to see the big thing in our own eyes. And that's pretty much what happens. As consumers, we tend to look at the big companies, the international ones, like, oh, they're doing this wrong, but we never focus on what the small ones are doing wrong, and we are the ones that are generating most of the employment, most of the products. We are the suppliers of this big company. So let me take your sentence to encourage the business owners that we're here to remember that it is our duty to be responsible and to be integral and to be diverse, to have that. It's not only a coin for the big ones. It's something that we should be enforcing ourselves. And sometimes it's a marketing thing. I work a lot with marketing areas, because we have this thing that is called social responsible business, and it's like a stamp that we have in products. And it's a marketing tool. You might as well lie, you said, in order to get that. But it is our duty to make sure that we're doing that the best possible way. But still, it seems to be something voluntary. And that would be my question for you, Tania. Should we enforce integrity in companies through laws, regulations, or should it still be something voluntary, and let's just hope that we find the best?
Well, I think we all know the answer to that question. Here's the deal. I'm actually, right now, I'm in an Airbnb. I'm not in my home. Why? Because I had a leak in my house. And I'm telling you this because if you've ever, anybody who's listening right now, I'm sure at least half of you have had some leak in your home. And you're like, oh man, but the windows are sealed and the roof's fine, and water will always find a way in. And I tell you this spontaneous story because whether you enforce something by law or there will always be somebody who wants to take advantage of a situation and not live or function in integrity. So that's going to happen. And so I'm sorry, but the harder proposition is we're going to have to change systems. Yeah. I mean, I'm sincere. I think that's the reality, right? Like we have systems that are very binary. So it's like, and also, especially in the US, you have a lot of people who are like top level executives who are like, I want to keep all of this. And it's like, but then it'll never be expansive. It'll never be bigger. You can so it's a systemic change that needs to occur as opposed to enforcing a law. I mean, we see how this works in all sectors. Like, water's going to come in. So, yeah.
Now that you talk about changing the system, there's this book that I have been reading because I haven't been able to finish it, but I'm really delighted on it. That is called Less is More from Jason Hickel, and he talks about degrowth. And particularly at this point of the year, that we all start doing our plannings for the new year and our objectives. And a big discussion that I had with my business partner, particularly because of the 10 years of the business, were, okay, what now? So the first 10 years, we were focusing on surviving and on trying to get to our balance. But now, what is it that we want to accomplish? And the first thing that came to us was, we want to be bigger. He keeps on saying this, I want to have a building with my logo on it, and I always question him because of this book. Do we really want to be that big? Because I think that one of the issues is that we still believe, and that's the core of what Jason Hickel says. There's a phrase I really love: nothing on nature grows eternally. However, we believe that economics should, you know, and every KPI in a business, every business objective is always more, you know? And now that you were talking about this, I think that's part of the system that we need to change. How do we create a system that is not only focuses on money?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm actually working with a startup right now called Halo Strategies, and we're creating a software for people to work less and be happier more because they're focused and aligned on everything. And one thing that I've made very clear that just stays between us, because we're in prototype right now, is I want to track happiness. We're doing a happiness tracker, and not in a fluffy way. Happiness can be quantified and qualified. I mean, as a worker, anybody who we've worked, we know that happiness can be measured. There's metrics around impact. Feeling like I have some personal agency and I can have some impact. There's metrics around, you know, am I being seen for the work that the good work that I'm doing and being sort of awarded? Am I having personal time? Am I getting work-life integration? And so that's, to me, I'm so excited because, you know, when you have like you're building something with a team and then you have an idea because it's based on your own needs and what you've seen. I've seen in companies. And I realized that's a real system changer to put that as a primary thing. And this will be like an enterprise software. And it's not fluffy, it's necessary. So that's one way. But again, I'm sure everybody on this call, hello, everyone. Sorry, I can't see you, but I see you in my mind's eye. But I hope everybody is thinking about whether you're making software or some other products or services, how do you qualify and quantify things that, like, we look at all these things in the system and forget that. Let's look at the things nobody's looking at. Let's solve the problems that nobody's looking to solve. Do that in your products and services, and then give me a call because I'll buy them. I'll buy them all. But I'm going to make some money first, and then I'll buy them. Yeah,
yeah, and I think the key word more than impact is purpose. Like I have seen, I teach in a university degree, and I see my students talk about their purpose. And that was something that I don't know what age you are, but I'm 40 years old almost. And I remember 20 years ago, no one talked about their purpose. It was not something that we talked with your friends.
Yes.
And now I see them talking about this, like how much they believe in things. And I believe that happiness index that you're talking about, it's a great thing. Bhutan already does that. You know, they already have a measurement in this small country. I take it, it's a small country, it's in Asia, and it's easy, you know, to see how happy they are because they're small. Try that in Mexico with 100 million people, it's difficult. But still, there are ways to measure a way of development that's not economic based.
Yeah.
And I think that as we change that system, integrity will be completely different. Because now we think of integrity as not corruption, not regarding money.
That's right.
But it is not only about money. It's about all of this. Right?
Yeah. And, you know, because I'm deep in the process, and everybody who's here who's deep in the process of like a startup, it's like everything's top of mind right now. And one thing we talk about at Halo is value, but not just value as like a transactional thing, but what is my value to the company? What's the company's value to me? What's my value in the world? And then bring those all together. So to your point, Odile, they need to coalesce. Otherwise you have attrition, you have like, but when I feel like I can, you know, I know this phrase, bring my whole self to work. You've heard of that, like bring your whole self to work. But my phrase is work. You need to bring your whole self to us, because if it's not a safe place to show up and to be practicing happiness and practicing impact as part of doing my job, then I'm not gonna bring the best part of me to the company. So I think it's also time for organizations to step up and bring their best selves to us.
Love it. And I'm gonna take Aaron's question as a cue to asking you this thing that you're telling us about Halo, and it's awesome, but how do we break the system? So how can we develop this creativity to think about worlds that we have never seen? What is your best take on how do we become creative?
Okay, so one thing, since we've been talking about these sort of incongruities, right? Like what the website says and then what's really happening on the ground. So one, creative is seeing two things that don't fit together and then showing somebody that. It's like a juxtaposition. So if you see like the imagery on the website, you know, are people of color, and you see the people who are working there or not, write an email. That's a creative activist action. Write an email to the company and say, I noticed, I used to pick up the phone for years in the 90s. I'm 52. For years in the 90s, I'd get these catalogs from all of my favorite performing arts centers, and it would literally say on each one of them, we have a diverse and exciting new program. And I'd go, page 1, white dude, page 2, white dude. And I would call them up and I'd say, I was excited about your diverse and interesting program, but then I noticed 85% of the people that you've chosen are not diverse. And so that's one way to take that creative lens and start seeing two things that don't fit together, and raising your hand. And if you don't feel comfortable or safe doing it, tap your boss, speak up, you know, the chain of command, and say something. So that's one creative exercise. And I'm sorry, though, I apologize in advance. Once you start seeing things, you can't unsee and you can't unsay. So good luck, because you're going to change the world now. Are you happy? Maybe. Some days, meh, but most of the time, then you feel like you're part of something, you're contributing. You're not just going like, I guess things are going to stay the same.
I love what you say. It's true. Once that you see it, you cannot unsee it, and it changes the way that you think about everything.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very interesting. And you were mentioning something about how can creative and diversity together bring new products, for instance. So for these entrepreneurs that we are in here, how do we get creative? Is there an exercise, or is there something that you do every day?
Yeah, so that juxtaposition thing, let's do that for 1 second. So now the other exercise is take two things that are seemingly disparate, that totally don't go together, and then find a way to connect them. What? So let's say hotels and your kitchen. I don't know. Oh, look, Airbnb. So let's say, you know, so this is a really fun exercise. I'll give you another exercise too. So 1, take two things that don't go together and try to find a way that they can connect. And 2, let me think of a good one for this group. Who, that was me kind of gently twirling my non-beard for a second. Gosh, there's so many. It's like, you know, when you go onto Spotify and you're like, I don't know who I want to listen to. Let me come back to you. I'm going to think about a good one for this group, because I know it's a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are thinking new thoughts and creating new worlds. So I want to be thoughtful about an exercise. So I'll be here, but my brain is going to think of something.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep on with the questions.
Yeah, totally.
Now that we're thinking about resources, what books, resources do you recommend for creativity?
Okay. 1, Creative Trespassing. And not just because I wrote it, but actually there's a ton of, so I did write it. It's called Creative Trespassing. And I wrote it so that you can read it in bite size for people who have jobs, you know, all of us. And there are exercises in there. So when you're feeling stuck in the creative process, or you're feeling stuck in your job, there's some really great exercises to get you there. There's also a book I would recommend by Carol Dweck called Mindset. And it's where, if you've ever heard the two terms growth mindset and fixed mindset, it comes from her. So that's a book I would recommend. And then a third one, there's so many, oh my goodness. But a third one is, I forgot the name of it, but Twyla Tharp, who was an American choreographer and dancer herself, wrote this book on creativity. I can't remember the name. Twyla Tharp, you'll find it. So many more, ton. Oh my gosh. There's another one called like Orbiting the Giant Hairball, which sounds horrible, but it's wonderful. And it's about this this guy who used to work for Hallmark cards, and it was a horrible experience for him. And so he imagined this world where it was a less horrible experience, and then kind of wrote about it. It's really wonderful. Anyway, I could go on and on and on, but I'll put that there. Chris. I
I once
hopefully
saw
those,
this exercise in, I think it was a sitcom or something, when they're talking about the worst case scenario. And I think that sometimes when we get panicked on how things are going to turn out, giving us the space to actually think of the worst case scenario,
yeah.
it was great. And I remember that I saw the exercise, and I have done it like two or three times, when I think, okay, what's the worst that can actually happen? And then you go nuts, you know, like I can't get out of my house and the car will jump into me. But imagine that it jumps into you, and then you don't die, but I don't know. I'm just like, you know, like you go
Totally.
into the worst scenario,
Yeah.
and somehow creativity happens. You know?
That's really,
things.
That's beautiful. And so now you triggered two exercises. So one thing, especially when you're working in a job or a way that you're feeling like a little stuck, like things aren't fresh, is to pretend you're a cultural anthropologist and enter your workspace and as if you know nothing. You don't know the people, you don't even know the place, and you just take field notes like, walked in today, somebody stared at me, they smiled, could be happy. It will shift the way you enter any space, any ideation session. It's a wonderful thing. And then the second thing I'm going to give you, especially entrepreneurs, listen up, is a lot of times, I don't know, has anybody ever doubted themselves? Anybody ever felt fear for launching something? Anybody ever felt freaked out because they had to ask a VC for money? Okay, so here's an exercise you can do. When you're starting doubts creeping in, ask yourself, is it true? Is it true? And if it's not true, let it go. So Odile, let's do this together. Is there any doubt that you, in the last 10 years, was there like any doubt that crept in? And just, you could tell me just one thing. It doesn't.
Yeah, maybe I thought that I could not sell to an American company.
Wonderful. So the doubt is, I don't think I can sell to American companies. So ask yourself, is that true? Is that true? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, and then answer that. So no, it's not true. I've had experience selling to lots of countries, and then you let it go. Then you let it go. And also with that, if you you know, you can, if it is true, I can't, you know, I'm freaked out, I can't sell to American companies. Is it true? Yeah, I've never done it before. Then ask for help and support. This is the thing too, you know, a lot of times we think we need to know everything and be perfect. And the reality of it is then there's no diversity in thought, input, insights, and we're just going to produce something that is of one note, one tone. No, anyway, yeah.
And let me circle that into particularly gender issues. There's this imposter syndrome that I'm sure that it not only happens to women, but you know that women tend to have it more. You know, this question of, I won't be able to do it, you know, or I'm here because of luck. Now that we're talking about these 10 years, I have received a lot of congratulations, you know, you've done it, and you were. I remember one friend said, you were pioneering, and I thought like, what? No, we're not. You know, like, I'm not pioneering anything. And then I thought, well, maybe I am. And when we discussed on this imposter syndrome, there was one tool that once they told me that the best way to say it is, you are such a good imposter that someone actually believed you. So that even if you actually believe that you're doing this in the worst way, you're doing it so good that no one noticed. So that also changes a lot, and it's very complicated to have the imposter syndrome when you're going to talk to someone, pitch an idea. You know, someone comment here that fake it till you make it, but sometimes the thing is, how do I even fake it? You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, first of all, imposter syndrome, which I write about a lot because it's ironically, people who have imposter syndrome are really high achievers. And there's actually this statistic that women who are 100% qualified for a job feel 50% like they'll apply for it. And then the inverse is men who are 50% qualified will 100% of the time apply for it. So I like to say, instead of imposter syndrome, imposter system. because it's not us that's broken. We're wonderful. It's the system that's broken. And so I love what you did to remind yourself of like basically it's a mindset thing. So it's like, if those of you who feel those moments of like, I don't deserve to be here, I'm not educated enough, I don't have enough experience, what you can do is you can say, what's the positive opposite of that? So, for example, if I'm like, I don't deserve to be speaking to these amazing human beings, the positive opposite is, I can say some stuff, and then just connect. So to really to change that story that we've been telling ourselves, that this isn't our story, it's all learned. It's like those moments when you unlearn it and say, no, I'm not going to take on that. I'm not an imposter. I'm impossibly awesome, and I deserve to be here. Yeah.
And bringing this back to integrity, I think that also the knowing who you are makes you always being the same person. And one of the big dangers of having this imposter syndrome is that because you don't think that you fit in, you end up changing who you are.
Yes.
And that's not integral at all. You have to have this idea of exactly who you are. You have to be it everywhere. And you just said it perfectly. If you don't fit there, the problem is not you, it's the place that you are fitting in. There should be a place for all of us.
Yes, 1,000,000%. I see you looking at, there's a bunch. Oh my gosh, it's a very active chat. Okay.
Let me just translate to you what Carolina is saying. Carolina says, I consider that there are some people that disguise their intentions. However, our intuition always helps us recognize the right answer. Very well said, Carolina. You got it. And Anon asks, how to achieve innovation in technology?
Oh, is that a question?
Yes.
If I could answer that, I would be on my own private jet. No, I'm kidding. So I really, number one is diversity in all directions, and bringing a diverse team together to add layers that nobody knew were missing, and now you can't live without. You can't make your software or technology without. The minute you silo up and think like, I want to put a stake in the ground, and I want to be the person who launches the thing, that you've shot yourself in the foot. You've made something just for yourself as opposed to an entire world. So that's my number one. There's statistics and measurements to support that, and just from an interpersonal level, that good business is done with diverse humans in the room. Period.
Let me give you another example. There's a very popular story of Volvo, whose creativity team created the seatbelt.
Oh yeah, I know this story. Go on. Yes,
and it's
amazing.
Open technology. Everybody can use it. And I always ask the question on conference and stuff like, okay, who women in here has never changed the seatbelt? And we all have put it in the wrong way. And that's because it was created by men. And there has never been women in the creativity teams in cars until 1 or 2 years ago. I have just heard that for the first time, the dummies that they use for car crashes include women type bodies. And that was a game changer, because the bag would immediately crush women's breasts. And we would at least be hurt in different ways. And again, that's another big example in which, if there's no diversity, and that's like the most common one, that's 51% of the world's population. Yeah. And we never consider it.
Yeah, and I remember learning that, and women died, and they couldn't figure out why. And they, a group of dudes, so of course they couldn't figure out why. I mean, it was so ethnocentric, so like gender centric. I was just like, it's mind blowing. And so again, all of you now creative trespassers, when you see these incongruities, send a carrier pigeon, raise your hand and say something. I honestly, yes. Yeah.
Particularly, I guess, as a feminist, when these issues, it's about men helping out. I don't believe that they should be left aside. I do believe that men are in places in which women are not going to be. So they are the ones that turn around and say, hey, there's people missing.
That's right.
I always say that, who's missing in this table? Like, who's missing at the table? Because even you and me, we are the privileged within a certain group. So
Yeah.
who's not in the table?
Yeah, you know, you're reminding me, there's an artist named Nicole Hebron, who has this this project called "If You Don't See Something, Say Something." So in the UK, you know, I think there's a campaign like, if you see something, say something. Like if something weird is happening, but if you don't see something, so if the boardroom is not filled with people, you know, who represent everyone, say something. If you don't see the people represented, if you don't see the seatbelt that fits the human body that you're in, say something. That's chef's kiss. Mwah, to that.
Okay, so now that we talk about creativity and curiosity, how can we encourage it in our teams, they ask? How do we
Ooh.
encourage creativity in a team?
I want to know, this is where I want like a dialogue with the person who's asking the question. How, okay, well, I'm trying to answer it. I want it for people to put in how they have done that within their teams. If there's any ways in which you found that creativity within the team has been helpful. So one thing I love is take a break where you walk. And I know that sounds simple, but there's actually a big study to support that walking increases creativity by 60%. And it also, if you're in a body that can't walk, that literally removing yourself from the tools and the work that you're doing, disrupting those patterns and habits that are keeping you stuck, and I can't solve the problem, I can't be creative, I can't come up with something, will help you come up with something. And another thing I'd like to say about this is, everyone here, it's our job to bring things from outside of business, outside of what we're working on from 9 to 5, or most of us from like 8 to 8, you know, to bring those influences and ideas into what we're doing. So go to museums, go to plays, go to dance performances, go to spontaneous karaoke nights, and listen and hear and bring some of those ideas or ways of working. So for example, go to you know, an improv club and see how comedians do improv, and you'll realize, oh, they listen to each other, they're responding in real time, they have no hangups, they're just like, yes. And try that with your team. Where nobody can say no. When somebody's coming up with an idea, you know, you have an ideation set, and they can only say yes and add something to it. So there are a lot of ways to pull from what already exists and bring it into what you're doing.
Okay, and circling back to the integrity thing, Tania, how do we raise the hand when we see that someone inside is not aligning with what we were believing? Particularly because when we're trying to be creative, we're trying to think out of the mold and all those phrases that we hear. But what if that idea is far away from what we wanted to be in the first place? Where do we place the line?
Give me an example.
I'm thinking, now that you talked about stand-up, most of the stand-up comedians tend to push a little bit on, I don't know, offensive comments. I would call them offensive comments.
Yeah.
And most of the time doing what I do, I think like we should not be making fun of that. We should not be making fun of the disability. We should, but that's at least they're pushing, and that makes them creative. So once that you are back into your world, how do you place a line between when to push and try to think outside of the box, and when?
That's really interesting. I think it's almost like the difference between breaking and breaking through. You know, like when you're saying push, and I totally understand. I've been in audiences watching stand-up, and they've made fun of my gender, and so typically I just cry and leave. I mean, honestly. So, but that to me is when people feel broken. That's not creativity. To me, the hallmark of anything creative is back to the beginning of our conversation, that there's an alignment, and B, we pretend that we don't exist just in and of ourselves, that we are interconnected, and function like that. So if we are not uplifting with our comedy, then what are we doing? Honestly, like, I'm a big fan of comedy, and I like to deconstruct it. My background and my degree is in theater and playwriting, and so that's why I got into, like, you know, marketing, storytelling, and then writing books and things like that. Like, it made sense to me, and yeah, I think that this is the thing too. What we learned in theater is a couple of things. One, we learned that there's an audience, that we are offering something to an audience, so we need to consider them. It's not just about us. And then two, the one thing I really learned foundationally in creative writing was show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. So if you're reading a book and it says, Tania went to the computer and hit the keys, that's telling. But as showing is, Tania slumped her shoulders down and began to cry as she thought about answering these questions because they were so meaty, you know. And that's the same thing with our actions and with creativity. Show, don't tell. You know, show by the way that you interact, the way that you engage your whole team in a creative practice. Take a 20-minute break where you go for a walk together and you don't talk about work, and you don't talk about, we need to solve the problem. You just talk. You talk about the play you saw the night before, or the piece of art that made you cry, you know. Yeah. When I find a little...
There's a question here from a very young person from Renata is 16 years old, and she's asking for advice on how can young people like her be innovative and particularly integrity while being a woman.
My gosh, first of all, I hope you hire me. When read it one more time. Read it one more time. I just
how can young people like me keep being innovative and particularly being a woman?
Oh my gosh. Ask good questions and then listen to the answers. And no, I want you to know I'm looking at you. I mean, I can't see you. I don't have a camera in your house. I'm not creepy or weird like that. But I see you in my body. You are the future. You are necessary. You are the present. And anybody who tells you anything else is lying. And you don't, and anything that doesn't make you feel alive and uplifted, you can let go of, and just keep asking questions. And if you need, I'll put my email somewhere. I will be your champion, but also know that you have resources, and that we're here and we're cheering you on the whole way. Never forget that this is not a pursuit alone. You know, a lot of times when we get stuck in those mindsets of like, well, I'm a girl, I'm a woman, and how do I compete or even participate in a system that sees me as broken before I even try? And the reality of it is you are fully formed, and people are here to support you. So I don't know that answers any of your questions, but I'm just rooting for you.
And you know, also when we're 16, we believe that this is a system that we're going to grow up in. And what I want to tell you is that it's exactly the opposite. When you're 16, you can create the system that you want. And I think that's the promise, you know, the believing that it's not about innovating within the system. It's about changing the system. So innovation is something that happens. So I really have seen so many of my students already. I have been teaching for so long time that I have students that have started being my high school students and are today in a business by themselves. And I see the different way in which they do business. And I understand that that's how innovation looks like when you don't have any barrier in front of you, when you want to change the system.
You know what? Totally. And you're making me think about, I mean, in my lifetime, I am 52 years old, and I never thought that I could marry another woman. What? That's crazy. So all of the, as you were saying, Odile, these systems that we think we're born into and that cement us in who we have to be in our lifetimes, because people have been activists, have activated movements, things have shifted. So absolutely, I love that. I love that.
So if anyone has any more questions, we have the 9 minutes with Tania, so let's squeeze her as much as possible. What advices can you give them regarding what's happening with artificial intelligence in different ways, including creativity?
Yeah, artificial intelligence wants to be creative humans. Period. And it's funny because, you know, so I was an early user of ChatGPT, for example,
Mhm.
and one thing it does horribly bad is creative writing. Even, and I, you know all the prompts. So the beauty of it, of artificial intelligence, is it relies on the programmers. This is why diversity is really effing important. The people who are putting input into these systems is what you're going to get out of the system. And so, you know, yeah, like we're using AI with our software, and it's our massive responsibility to make sure that it is as compassionate and diverse as the people who are programming it and beyond. But I would say that really it's stealing the better technology. Who here knows HI? HI? No one? Human ingenuity. Bam. And that's the truth. HI will kick AI's ass anytime. And I'm sorry if I said I don't know. I know there's a 16-year-old. Don't ever no, you're fine. You say it all the time. But I really believe that human ingenuity it is number one. And so as long as we are, again, uplifting with AI rather than taking people down, we can use it for good and not evil.
Okay, 3 more questions. For you, what is the importance of doing art and creativity businesses? And how did you decide to give voice to the importance of creativity?
Oh my gosh. Well, as I said, because my background, I grew up in a family that was chaotic and wild, and I grew up in poverty. And so from an early age, I had like a notebook and a pen, and I felt like me writing and observing these weird and wonderful ways in which we were living unfold before me allowed me to kind of narrate my life as it was happening, to deconstruct it, and to also find moments where like poverty could be magical for a moment. Like it really, so writing, I wrote since I was little, like really little, like I think 10 years old, little. And it was a way for me to process the world around me and feel more confident when I didn't have friends at school, or when I was too boyish to hang out with the girl, or too girlish to be on the boys basketball team, or whatever. And so writing and observing the world has always been a way in which I've tapped into creativity. And then after getting a degree in theater, I realized, oh, there's this thing called marketing, and all the skills that I have about writing compelling stories that, you know, see an audience and bring them in, whether that's to a software or to a theater show, it doesn't matter. And those skills became really valuable in the working world. And then I realized after a while of going into, you know, a lot of tech companies, a lot of organizations, and speaking about creativity and things like that, I'm like, people would come up to me after I talked and say, you know, I'm actually like on the side, I brew beer, or I knit sweaters, or I'm writing a novel, you know. And I realized that we all have this, and then did research about we're all born creative, and creative. I don't mean there's 2 C's to creativity. There's a little c and a big C. The little c we're all born with, and it's our ability to solve problems, to come up with infinite solutions for one little problem. We all have that. And then the big C is like, I paint and I've learned the skill of dancing, or clearly I haven't, but and stuff like that. So I took my C's and I started to translate that into the business world, and honor all the people who wanted to express themselves and were feeling stuck and stifled in their job because they didn't have they didn't think they had the ability to stretch their creative muscles. And I said, yeah, let's do this. Like, come on in. That was me throwing a rope and inviting people in. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question. How do you find the correct group of diverse people in order to really innovate?
This is where I'm going to tell you, there's some people who are like just lazy C-level people who are like, I'll just hire the people who are me, who are my friends. And it's like, but all your friends look alike and act alike and have similar fashion. You know, they're all like the same Z's. So get out of your circle, get out of your circle, your sphere, go to places and meet people that are not you and your friends and your team. That's how. I mean, I'm being a little cheeky, but it is simple. It's just a practice. That's the difference. Is when you do this often enough, it becomes like a muscle that you've stretched, and then there won't be a question anymore. You'll know exactly where to go to meet the people that you want to invite in.
Okay, there's another question here that says, well, they ask for other ways of stimulating creativity, but you just went into certain exercises and your book. And it says, how can we develop our creativity by using our values and our integrity?
Okay, and this is the first thing that comes to mind. I'm sorry for you guys because my mind is a little wild. But one thing, this is an exercise I found when I was working with a lot of executives, like sort of coaching them to get over their imposter syndrome and feeling like they didn't belong. And a lot of them told me, well, even my job title sucks. Like, CMO, like, chief marketing officer, like that's really boring. And so I came up with this exercise. I give you this gift about your values and your purpose and your aiming. Have 2 columns on a piece of paper. On one column, write your job responsibilities, just kind of bullet point them out, like answer emails, come up with ideas. And on the other side of it, I want you to put all of the reasons why people light up in your presence at work, whether that's through emails, if you're working hybrid or remote. So, it could be like, I have to create integrated campaigns. And then it's like, I'm funny. And then you're going to take one from column A and one from column B, and you're going to come up with a new job title based on your purpose, rather than what somebody just assigns you. So you can be like the curator of shenanigans, or I don't know, because I need somebody's title. What's your title, Odile? What's your like real title?
My real title?
Yeah, your job title.
The executive director.
Executive director. Mm-hmm. Executive director. But why do people really adore you at work? What are some ways in which people they're like, oh, Odile's there.
She's the one with the big ideas.
Okay, so it's executive director of big ideas. Bam, and I know it sounds sort of silly, but everybody who's done this, and I've done it with some people who are like, oh my gosh, they feel more like they're doing their job based on purpose. Hey, make some business cards. Don't tell your boss unless you already are the boss, and then just make them for everyone.
Thank you very much, Tania. All of this has been really enlightening, and I think it's a fun way of remembering that we can be an integral person, inter people, without necessarily sacrificing on the business. And it's actually the other way around. There was this last question that I typed the answer, because they were saying, like, as a woman in a man's job, how can I change this? Find the benefit. There's always a benefit in being the integral person, the diverse. There's always a benefit, and we have just to speak it out loud. So many things to take away from this lesson. Thank you very much, Tania, for your time. Thank you very much for all of you that have accompanied us during this conversation. I think they already left Tania's LinkedIn profile. I'm leaving mine in case you have other questions. And do remember that this talk, we're going to be doing these talks every month. So this is one of many to come. So thank you also the embassy for inviting Tania, for inviting me. I don't know if Miguel or someone else wants to say a few goodbye questions, but it has been a pleasure to get to meet you, Tania, and to get to share all these moments with this wonderful young people.
Oh, thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
The pleasure has been all ours. It's so refreshing to listen to you. We have been on the brink of, artificial intelligence, creativity, integrity, so many things that you discuss. It's been amazing to listen to you, and we really, really thank you guys for discussing all of this for us. And please, for the rest and for the public in general, we want also to recognize Tingala, Jo, Cecilia, Angie, all of the people who put all of this together, raise for the translation services. And please put something on your calendars. February 15 is going to be our next session, and hopefully we'll have all of you here. All right. Once again, thank you very much, Tania. Odile, we'll look for you later, and we'll put this video, by the way, somewhere. We'll let you know very soon.
I like that. I like the vagueness. Somewhere you'll have to find it. That's it's a creative exercise. Okay.
The good part is we have the registration emails from everyone, so we'll let you know. Don't worry.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.